What is going on, guys? My name is Powerbang. Welcome back to another PUBG Mobile video. Today, we're not focusing so much on gameplay, but more on current events and some huge, groundbreaking, earth-shattering news that's come out in the past couple of days from Tencent, who are the creators of PUBG Mobile. And that is the creation and the backing of the Club Open, which is a $2 million PUBG Mobile competitive tournament that's going to be happening over the course of 2019. It's basically a full year-long tournament that's going to be starting here in the next week or two in March, and it's going to be running for the course of the year. And that's absolutely incredible news, obviously, for PUBG Mobile, but also mobile esports as a whole. This will be the biggest mobile esports tournament as far as prize pool is concerned in history. $2 million in total prize pool has been pledged by Tencent. That is absolutely insane, incredible, and means nothing but great things for mobile esports moving forward. Let's talk a little bit of details, shall we, about this Club Open. We'll take a look over here at the Club Open website. If you guys have not seen anything about this just yet, you can go over to PUBGmobile.com/esports and get all of the details there on the PUBG Mobile Club Open. So you can see right here the prize pool, $2 million. Are you kidding me? It's crazy. The regions included, there's going to be 10 different regions. This is a worldwide tournament, and it's going to be North America, South America, Europe, India. We've got Southeast Asia, the Middle East, China, Korea, Japan, a wild card, and I believe I missed Europe there as well, and South America. So I think I said a couple of those twice. Whatever. It's on the screen right there if you guys missed it. But essentially, 10 different regions. The wild card I'm not certain about, but I'm assuming here that it is going to be a popular team that PUBG is going to invite to come join the fun to round out the top, 16 teams or what have you in the global finals. That's my understanding. That's what they've done in past competitions, like in the PUBG Mobile Star Challenge. I'm just hopeful that it's somebody that deserves to be there and can add something to the competitive side of things rather than just like a complete popularity contest. I want them to, whoever it happens to be, I want them to be able to play the game at a high level. So that being said, that's the kind of the synopsis of what is going down with the Club Open. So how exactly is this kind of set up? Now, you've got a schedule. First of all, there's a spring split. Now, registration is going on right now, March 8th through the 18th, and then we have the qualification round, which is happening online, which means you, me, anyone else can register and start playing with our club online, and this happens during the Crew Challenge. So the Crew Challenge and the Club Open are actually related. So make sure that you guys that are interested in winning, a share of $2 million, don't miss out on the Crew Challenge, because you want to make sure that you're hopping on board with that so you don't miss out on that $2 million, because it's important. So the Crew Challenge, you got to place in the upper echelon of that to receive your invite to the Spring Split, which is going to be the regional group round where there are 32 crews available. And essentially, they're going to play some tournament games, knock each other out, get down to 24 crews, knock each other out some more in some tournament games, get down to 16 crews. And that's when you have the regional finals where you're going to battle it out to send one or two teams to the global finals for that split, and that's going to happen in July. Now, each region is going to send a certain number of teams depending on how big the region is. I believe North America, for those of you guys watching here, sends 2 teams. India sends 2 teams. Southeast Asia sends 2 teams. Some of the smaller regions, I believe like South America, sends 1 team. That being said, guys, 1 or 2 teams from every region will be going to the global finals, and that's where the big money is played for. So that will be happening in the spring, and again, kind of repeated in the fall. I believe the prize pool will be divvied up between the spring and the fall splits, and that is kind of what is shown here on the website. Now, rule set. There's a Club Open rule set that is shown on the site, and this is where some controversy has been boiling over the past couple of days. The community has really kind of been in an uproar over one particular point, and we're going to discuss that at length in this episode. I'm going to give my thoughts. I'm going to discuss pros, cons, what the developer's thinking, what the community's thinking, and try to kind of like digest this and figure out if it's a good thing, if it's a bad thing, and kind of give my take on it. Now, Now, looking at the rules, here we have the player equipment and apparel section of the rule set, and supported devices in 6.1 is what we're keying in on here. And it says that players may participate in tournaments both in online events and at LAN events only on mobile phone handheld devices. Players may not play on tablets, personal computers, consoles, laptops, or any other non-handheld device. Players may not use emulators to play on PC or other device that is not a handheld device. They're really doubling down on this handheld device thing. Players competing in online events may only use devices running the Android or iOS operating systems. At LAN events, players will be provided with officially supported equipment and software. Now, to put that out there in plain English, tablets are not allowed both in online play and offline LAN event play. That means iPads are not allowed for the Club Open and the Crew Challenge. Now, the Crew Challenge is, if you want to play the Crew Challenge and not have a chance at the Club Open, you can use your tablet. You can still play iPad. They're not banned per se. But if you want to have an opportunity to play for $2 million and make it to that next stage for the Club Open, they are not permitting iPad play, and that's something that they can detect your software and your hardware through, mechanical, technical means, and that's something that they've decided not to allow. Cue the uproar, cue the outrage in the community, cue the competitive scene, where at least in North America, 85 to 90% of the competitive players out there have actually migrated or have existed on iPads and play competitively on tablets already. So this is something that obviously is met with a lot of harsh criticism, not only from the PUBG Mobile scene, but you're seeing it from Fortnite mobile players, you're seeing it from ROS mobile players. Tablets have been, by and large, the go-to as far as competitive play is concerned, and I'll explain what the advantages are here in just a moment. So the iPad 12.9 inch, the iPad Pro, this thing is absolutely massive, and it plays in the same division that the iPhones, the regular handheld mobile devices. The iPad Pro plays in that same division. It has almost 105 square inches of surface area on the device. That is crazy huge. Now, to put that in comparison with an iPhone 10 per se, that's a pretty commonly sized device. The iPhone 10 has just under 16 inches of surface area. 16 compared to 105, that is insane. That is 664% larger on the iPad Pro. That is over 6.5 times larger. Things that you see on the iPad Pro versus things on a phone. So like when you see an enemy out at 300 meters on an iPad Pro, he's probably the size of a dude standing 50 meters away on a phone. So that is the difference of seeing someone on an iPad Pro versus a phone. Now, looking at a standard iPad, like an iPad Air 2, for example, the surface area on that is 63 square inches. Now, that is still, let's see here, 400% larger than a phone. So things are 4 times the size on an iPad that they are on a phone comparatively, and that varies depending on which make and model you're using on the phone and iPad, but roughly speaking, 4 to 6 times larger on a tablet. Yikes, that's a massive advantage. Another advantage that not a lot of people are talking about right now is just the surface area that you have to control the device. Now, some would argue that the tablet should be the go-to device for competitive play because it allows more skill to be introduced into the competition. As far as surface area is concerned, that, big old hands like mine, playing claw, which is multiple fingers on the screen at the same time, that is supremely difficult when you're doing it on a device that is super small, right? This is a max version of the iPhone 10. I don't have the standard size around here, but like here's a Note 9. I mean, these things, if I'm to, put multiple fingers on here, I'm covering up a good chunk of the screen to be able to do that. Now, on a tablet that's like, pretty large, when I'm tapping and using 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fingers to play the game, which gives you further control, more dexterity. I can do more things at once, namely moving and shooting at the same time, lean peeking and moving back and forth while shooting. That is something you'll see a lot of pro players do. That's something that is just really, really difficult to do on the phone while still maintaining vision on your target. Now, iPad's very easy to do these things. iPad Pro, supremely easy to do those things and still maintain really good vision. So claw control and better control, much easier to do on a tablet. So that's another huge advantage they have on the mobile phone. Now, I personally don't play on a tablet. I've always stayed on a phone just due to ease of use, resolution, all of that good stuff. But from interviews with a lot of players who do play on tablet, they've all told me that the recoil control on an iPad is fairly easy compared to playing on a phone. I'm not sure to what degree or how much better it actually is, but that's something that is commonly heard, is that recoil control is a little bit easier on a tablet. So that's another advantage that I have to think is there for tablet players. And something that I have noticed in playing with a lot of my tablet friends is that there are visual bugs on tablets, specifically iPads, that are not there for phone players, such as the ability to render end players but not buildings at the same distance. What you'll see is an iPad player standing on a ridge, for example, on Rozok Hill in Erringel's map. You'll see people come up to the Roz Hill, and all of a sudden, if you have a tablet player on your team, none of the buildings on the far side of Roz will render in, but the players in those buildings will. So you know exactly where the players are in those buildings, and once you see something like that, like once you see that information, you can't unsee it, right? So it's not like you were trying to cheat, you weren't trying to gain an advantage, but like when the game all of a sudden just shows you where everybody is, crap, now I know all that information and it's really kind of unfair. So that's another reason that iPads really have a pretty huge advantage over phones, because I know phones, when you go up to that same exact location, you cannot see those players with that render glitch, and that is something that tablet players often get the benefit of. Now, granted, with everybody playing on the same device, that render glitch, everybody's going to have the same access to it or the same advantage, but it may not render one way versus another, so people could actually abuse that glitch. And then also you might have people actually playing the game like to abuse glitches versus just playing it like the way it was meant to be played, and that's just really not how it should be. Now, granted, this is on the developer to fix the game, fix the glitches, fix the bugs, but as we all know, it's taking forever to fix a lot of the glaring issues in this game. That's going to come in another video here in the very near future. I've got another commentary that's going to break down all of like the most common bugs in this game, what we need to do to fix those, and also like the level of urgency and priority that these should kind of be ordered in. So that's going to be another topic altogether, but we're focusing on tablets today, as well as a $2 million prize pool. So as I touched on a little bit earlier, the decision to go forward with competitive tournaments with very, very high dollars attached to them without a significant chunk of your player base, i.e. tablets, that's a very dangerous precedent to set, because as a pioneer in an industry, you're kind of setting that precedent that, yo, this is how it's done. This is the way esports in mobile should be done moving forward. And right now you've got Tencent and PUBG Mobile saying that tablets are not necessarily a mobile device. Now, you even have the folks over at Apple kind of arguing that, iPads and their use case, really, they don't get used mobily. They're not used outside of the house a whole lot. They're almost an alternative to a laptop where the iPad stays at home. You use it at home, but the mobile is truly your on-the-go mobile device. Now, I don't really have a dog in that fight. I don't want to get caught up in the semantics of what's a mobile device, but at the same time, it is kind of important to try to understand what is allowable under the flagship of mobile gaming, right? Is an iPad allowable? Are tablets allowable? Are they not? And decisions like these have a giant impact on whether or not these are going to be allowed in the future. Other titles like ROS, Fortnite, Clash Royale, Supercell's Brawl Stars, and Clash of Clans, all of those have used tablets in one form or another in competition, and it's kind of curious to see all of these other big titles, granted with far less money attached. It's kind of curious to see all of these big titles using tablets, not necessarily exclusively either. There have been exclusively phone tournaments for those titles as well, well, but they have used tablets also, signifying that they're not bad and they are accepted in other games. But when you have one game that is using only phones, it makes it really difficult for cross-game play for pro players. Look in PC. Somebody like Shroud, right, with just immense skill level, that's an absolute god at anything they play. They can bounce from game to game to game and have that same level of performance across any game just by simply learning a few new controls, mastering the mechanics, and understanding the strategies behind whatever it is that they're playing, and then they can get to that god tier level that he always ascends to. Now on mobile, that's not necessarily the case if you're going from a game that requires you to play on a phone, which really lends itself to kind of a rudimentary form of claw control, or even thumbs play for some players. I do know a lot of thumbs players that are pros from Asia as well as North America, and then you're gonna say, okay, let's put out another title where, in pro play, we're gonna play only on tablets, or tablets and mobile phones are allowed, and then you see people try to transfer games and it's an entirely different game, strategy, and control system, and screen size, and it's just so much else to get used to, and it would be cool to see like a standard come across these games. It's really, really hard to see the whole ecosystem not jiving and working together in that regard. One thing I do worry about for Tencent is the reaction of their customer base. Obviously, with any decision that's made, there's always a very, very small minority who is very vocal about, changes and how they're negatively perceived. And that's what you're seeing in this case as well, is a very small minority of the player base is reacting very, very vocally to this change. And that's something that is pretty standard across any decision ever made in video games, except for the ones that are really nasty. You see like a giant outpouring of dissent and people just absolutely pissed off. But in this case, it does seem to be kind of contained to a small select group of people that are upset about tablet usage. And in this case, I do hear some of their points, and there's also some others that I'm going to bring to light right now. But one thing that worries me for Tencent is that they are potentially alienating a significant portion of their player base. Now, I'm sure they have the numbers on how many people are using phones versus how many people are using tablets for their paying customers, and that is probably going to be weighing in on their decision to go phone only. I would guess that the majority of their customers are playing on the phone, and or the sponsors that are supporting these tournaments are also phone manufacturers and would like to push their phones. More on that shortly. The tablet situation for the players, those that only have access to a tablet, which seems kind of weird given that it's 2019 and almost everyone on the planet has a phone. It seems kind of weird, but there is that potential that the tablet players that only play mobile games on their tablet would be alienated and thus get frustrated and leave the game behind entirely. That does worry me in this regard for PUBG Mobile. So a couple of things here before I dive into some business speak. First, it's important that rule sets are communicated and transparent, and that is something that you're seeing here. The rules are communicated, they are transparent. This is something that has been lacking in the past. Rules have been communicated after a tournament has begun, after people have signed up. In the PUBG Mobile Star Challenge, you had players under 18 and outside of regions where the tournament was taking place, signing up for tournaments which was never communicated beforehand, and then all of a sudden during the tournament it's like, oh yeah, if you guys move on, those players can't play. And it's like, what? So, having that kind of information in advance, super helpful. Kudos to PUBG for actually communicating it. Granted, it's not a long lead time to when the tournament actually starts to get practice on a phone, but at the same time, any advance notice that you guys can provide is encouraged and obviously appreciated. So from my perspective, I think it's a win to have transparent rules, communicated rules, written rules that we can all reference and that we're all clear on. So that's a win. Another thing I think is huge for esports, mobile esports as well, is the leveling of the playing field and making sure that equipment is standardized across the field. And that is also what they are accomplishing with this rule set. So that's something that I am happy about. And it's great to see that throughout competition, online and offline, that the devices and the capabilities of those devices will be standardized. And you won't see some players online dominating with the iPad iPad, getting to the finals, and then being absolutely awful on phones because of the aforementioned advantages not being there for them when they have to go at it on a mobile device, a phone. That is something that I'm happy to see the standardization. Again, there's been the question of, is this the right standardization? I don't necessarily have the answer to that. We've kind of talked about some of the pros and cons, but I am happy to see standardized equipment being used. Now, I don't have an issue with the phone. I think that is, a mobile device. I feel like the more we start going the tablet route, the more it starts blending in to, laptop and like advanced controls, essentially, to where it's like we're bleeding into, traditional esports to an extent. Now, I do think that there might be a division that we can have later on as far as like a phone division, a tablet division. But the business side of things right now, the viewer base, does not warrant a split of that viewer base. We do not have the traction right now as an industry, as an ecosystem, to be able to split that into different divisions and make it worth it for the investors and the sponsors who are funding all of this stuff to make it happen, to provide us with the opportunity to play for these huge prize pools. To close out this video, and I want to kind of give you guys my perspective on the industry. It's not something that I often talk about publicly, but I do think that it's an important perspective and viewpoint, and it's something that a lot of people take for granted as far as their entitlement to prize pools and opportunities and funds. And they feel like, because they're seeing these opportunities and tournaments happen for their PC brethren, that they should have those same opportunities as well. And I'm going to be the first to tell you that that is not the case. Mobile esports as a whole is roughly 10 years behind the development of PC esports. Now, it has all of the potential in the world. However, we are quite simply not there yet. We don't do the numbers that PC esports do. We don't have the sales that PC esports does. We aren't packing stadiums like PC esports are doing today. These PC esports teams have organizations with 9-figure valuations. That's more than $100 million for those of you guys that are counting zeros. They also are raising venture capital in the $25 to $50 million range. That's basically telling people that, this organization is eventually going to pull in revenue that exceeds that amount and then some in order to make their company worth way more than that. So that kind of gives you a sneak peek at what kind of value these organizations hold. There are also corporate sponsors, the big guys that you see sponsoring all these PC esports teams that are shelling out millions of dollars, and everyone is trying to get in on this cultural phenomenon known as esports. Now, the reality is that mobile gaming has the exact same potential and maybe even more than PC esports, but we have to put in our dues and we have to actually go through the effort and the time to get to that level. Quite frankly, we're not there yet. Now, I look at basically the industry through the lens of children and people that are up and coming. Like my kids, for example, I have 3 of them. They have access to literally every gaming system on the planet. They've got PC, they've got console, they've got tablet, they have phone. And as younger children, what devices are they picking up for their gaming experiences most often? It happens to be mobile applications on the tablet and on the phone. So that tells me that these guys are coming up on mobile devices, they're preferring mobile games, and that is kind of where the future is headed. And we're seeing this across the board, not just in Powerbang's children, but this is kind of an across the board scenario, and that is why I am personally jumping in and investing now in the mobile space. And that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about it and passionate about where it's going, is I see the future and I see the potential. But again, it's early. It's got a long way to go. We still don't do the same viewership as the PC guys. We don't do the same sales. We don't do the same numbers, and that is okay. Again, it's early. And that is what will ultimately bring in options, is when we start growing that viewer base and bringing in fans. Let's take the League of Legends 2018 World Finals as an example here. They did 100 million unique viewers over the course of their World Finals, and they peaked at 44 million concurrent viewers. That is absolutely insane viewership. They were packing stadiums, selling merch. Insanity. That is what you're kind of seeing from the top PC esports. 100 million different people tuning in to watch their favorite league teams slay out in the arena and try to come up with a champion. Now, I cannot wait for mobile to ascend to that level, but what you're seeing from a prize pool standpoint there is Riot Games, owners of League of Legends, actually contributed $2.5 million. Yeah, just $2.5 million to the prize pool for League. Now, they also had a little over $4 million contributed from the community as well for the purchase of character skins. So hero skins from League were actually purchased, and then those sales were contributed to the prize pool, a little over $4 million. So all in all, over $6 million was the total prize pool, but again, only $2.5 million of that contributed by the developer directly for the prize pool. Now, they contributed $2.5 million for 100 million unique, and 44 million concurrent. That is insane. So if you look at PUBG Mobile, who's made an investment right now, a pledge rather, of $2 million of prize pool, they're going to be seeing, 35 million concurrent viewers? Probably not. That's my estimation. So if it were all apples to apples right now, and we were seeing the same returns on mobile as PC was, we should be doing massive numbers for the returns of this prize pool that Tencent and PUBG has promised us. But instead, my estimation is that we'll probably see somewhere in the 1 million concurrent range, and that's kind of based off of the numbers that we're seeing from CRL, which is the Clash Royale World Finals. We saw last year at the end of the year around 1 million concurrent at the end of the year. So that being said, mobile is, it's growing. It's gaining traction, but again, a long way to go. And that kind of points to the ROI for mobile versus PC. That means sponsors and investors are jumping at the PC opportunity, and we're having to beg them to come over to mobile. And so when you have a sponsor and when you have big companies coming to mobile and saying, we see the opportunity here, we want to be an early adopter, we want to support what you're doing, we want to fund your prize pool. In my opinion, we need to be thankful for that. We need to understand that these opportunities are few and far between right now on mobile, and without opportunities like this, without something to play for, without sponsored tournaments, like for example, the Samsung tournament that sponsored $600,000 for prize pools and whatnot. And I'm not saying Samsung was 100% responsible for that, but sponsors are hugely responsible for the tournaments happening and for the prize pools that go out. Without Samsung stepping in and supporting that and saying, here, yes, you can do this, but play on our phones, we would not have these huge opportunities, and competitive communities fall apart. We would not have something to play for. The competitive fabric and the ongoing scrims and online tournaments rather, to wait for these big opportunities, they would just stop happening. And so when a company comes along and asks for a sacrifice or maybe a not ideal rule set. So, for example, in this scenario, sorry, tablet players, you're going to have to use a phone, which most people have access to. And if you guys were paying attention last tournament in LA, you knew that phone use was coming. This is not a surprise. They forced everybody to use phones then, and it was no secret that that was coming in the future. So for those of you guys that went out, tried to get an advantage by buying iPads, you knew this was a risk, and you kind of went at it anyways to try to get that advantage in online play, which I can't say that I blame you, because it is what it is. Everyone else is using this iPad online. You got to do it to keep up with the Joneses, right? I get that. But at the same time, you knew that it was potentially costing you long-term success for short-term gain. And that is something that I always have in mind with any decision I make. Yes, it may hurt me in the short term, but keep your eye on the prize. Keep your eye on that long-term vision. Keep your eye on your initial vision as far as, I want to be the best in the world. I want to win the world's biggest tournaments. If you know that those tournaments are going to be with a certain device, or, they have a very, very high likelihood, practice with those things. Keep them in your hands, get comfortable, make them second nature, and don't try to get that leg up just to get that online clout to win your $200 tournaments. Stick to winning the $2 million tournaments. Now, I'm confident that a lot of these players will have their skills transfer over. They'll be able to learn those new mechanics and that new technique. And there will be a few, not many, but there will be a few that will struggle and that won't be able to transfer over as well. But a lot of Battle Royale games are positioning and strategy and not necessarily gun skill. Gun skill is hugely important, clearly, but being in the right place at the right time and getting angles on people is even more so important. Knowing when to push, when to retreat, when to rotate, those are all more important than being able to win those 1v1 gunfights. 1v1s are important in pubs and just, random scrims, but in tournament play, team play and synergy and being able to operate as one unit in a well-timed fashion, far, far more important. So to wrap up my thoughts here on tablet play versus, iPhone play, I want to again just kind of touch on like the business side and, just kind of stress that if we want mobile gaming to get to that next level, we really have to be willing to accept some compromise and accept some sacrifice in the rule sets and in sponsored tournaments in order to get us to that next level. These tournaments are going to be marketed and promoted out the wazoo. Are you telling me that PUBG is going to come with a $2 million tournament and they're not going to spend probably $2 million on the back end to market it, to promote it, to get it out there, to get viewers on it? Because ultimately a company like Tencent with endless pockets, they are not going to let an event like this fail by having 300 people watch it. They're going to pump the viewer numbers, and those viewer numbers will ultimately become a success story in themselves. Articles will be written. Mainstream media will pick up on the fact that, oh my God, mobile gaming tournaments have X amount of millions of viewers. This is news, and this news will generate stories and will generate interest and will generate dollars for investing into future competitions. So my advice to everyone is to sit back, suck it up, deal with the inconveniences of having to use a certain type of device for the time being, do it for the good of the overall industry, and perhaps when we are all commanding insane dollar amounts, valuations, interest, fans, we then have the leverage to, basically design our own tournament rule structures and then really kind of put whatever devices we want on the platform. And at that point, if we want to have another tablet division or split the viewer base, maybe then it's okay. Because right now, with the viewer base that we have, we can't split that into all your favorite tablet players go here, all your favorite phone players go here. We just don't have the numbers to support it, guys. So those are my final thoughts on tablets versus phones and $2 million. I will close by saying thank you to PUBG Mobile for putting a $2 million tournament out there for all of us to take advantage of. I can tell you that we will be competing our little hearts out to try to go get a piece of that. Who knows how it will go, but damn it, we're going to have fun in the process. Guys, this has been Powerbang. Thank you so much for listening. I hope my message has resonated. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and stay tuned for another commentary piece coming in the future on bugs. Let me know, guys, if you like this video and if you want to see more of this style with me just kind of talking to the camera, you hearing my voice, my thoughts. It's kind of a brain dump, if you will. Anyways, guys, peace out. It's Powerbang. I'll catch you next time. Take care.